The cool thing about Pyromancy builds in DS3 is pretty much all of the important stuff can be accessed just after beating Abyss Watchers. So you can fight 2 easy bosses and have all the spells and equipment you need for the rest of the game. Simple. So let's go get a weapon and kill Abyss Watchers. Hey guys, Thinkfishy here, and welcome to an exercise in taking a simple idea, overcomplicating it as much as possible, and hopefully having some fun along the way. In this very silly Pyromancy run, I'll show you how to use all of the best pyro-themed weapons and spells to make mincemeat out of Dark Souls 3. So grab the Titanite shard on the chest, parry Gundyr, then head into Firelink for the dagger, a prism stone, and the large leather shield from the shop. Up to the top to do the tree jump, then around the building for the little lizard at the back. Trade the shield and the prism stone with the crow, then grab the Estus shard and serpent ring. In the high wall, we only need the gold pine resin and the Titanite shard right next to the tower on the wall bonfire. Then through the rest of the area for Frosty. Now when you get to the settlement, there's an NPC we need to speak to. Head to the broken bridge and speak to Yol to send him back to Firelink. Now for Yol's questline, we need to be hollow. So now chuck yourself off this ledge next to the settlement bonfire until you start looking a bit rough. When you do, head back to Firelink and speak to Yol. He'll give you 5 free levels at this point. Grab the Estus shard by the tree, the undead bone shard and the mortician's ashes in the arrow graveyard. Then past tree balls and up to light the cliff underside bonfire. From this bonfire, there's a couple of things we need to grab. First, follow this route for the fire clutch ring. Then this one to speak to Cornix, the friendly Pyromancy chap, and send him back to Firelink for later. After saying hi to Onion Man, take the lift up to the top, run past the demon and up onto the rooftops to grab Flynn's ring, then drop down the tower for the Chloranthy ring. Now work your way through the Road of Sacrifices and Farron Keep, grabbing all the Titanites along the way and opening up the gate. For the next part of the run, we need 12,000 souls. You'll usually have this after killing the large lizard by the Fahrenheit perimeter bonfire. But if you need a little extra, just cheese the Irithyll Night by the Road of Sacrifices. Head back to Firelink to find Yol dead and buy Dark Hand from Uria. Level up your flasks and buy all the embers that you can, because it's time for the second boss. Dark Hand is one of the best weapons in the game for the Dancer fight, because of her weakness to dark. It's particularly good for a pyro run because it scales great with Ymfah. My recommendation for the earliest, reasonable Dancer fight is hugging her right leg while staying unlocked. The DPS of Dark Hand will shred her health bar pretty quickly. Hugging the right leg will limit the amount of attack she can do. The reason that I play unlocked is one attack which you can see happens twice here in Phase 2. This quick 1-2 is a death sentence for an unembered character, and I find it much harder to dodge when you're locked on for some reason. With Dancer down, we can run around Lothric Castle grabbing all the necessary weapon upgrades. Start off jumping off the elevator into the Consume King's garden, then running clockwise around the garden for chunks, and up the elevator for a scale and some more chunks by the door. Now into the castle. I'm going to use Demon Scar for all of my casting on this run, but the Pyromancy Flame is actually a little better, so farm the Lothric Knight for large tighties if you want to level it up early. Grab the Twinkly and the chunks on the way to Dragon Barracks, then into the castle itself. And typically, we have to be quite careful running around here on a low-level character. But with this much vigour, Dark Hand, and a leveled up Pyromancy Flame, you can actually just clear out the whole level pretty easily. Once you've grabbed all the scales and twinklies, unlock the shortcut by Dragon Slayer armour, then head up it, and jump off this little gap in the wall. Kill the second Pus of Man for souls, then grab the Sunlight Straightsword from the chest. Now it's DLC time, so back to the Crucifixion Woods to absolutely bully Crystal Sage with Dark Hand. There's another cool way of doing this fight on a more traditional pyro character, but more on that later. Straight after the fight, drop down to the left for 2 Twinklies. Then head up towards the cathedral. Grab the Estus Shard outside the chapel, drop down into the River of Death, and run round to the right for the giant crystal lizard for our last scale. Then 2 final Twinklies from the small ones nearby. Finally into the cathedral towards Deacons to grab the Lloyd Sword Ring. Run through Ariandel, lighting bonfires and unlocking shortcuts until you get to Wilhelm. Bait him out the front, then cheese him off the cliff for the Onyx Blade. I was a little undecided between the Onyx and the Sunlight Straightsword for this run, which is why the eagle-eyed among you may notice a second Sunlight Straightsword in my inventory for testing. But ultimately, the ancestor of the Godslayer's Greatsword was the one I decided on. Use the Twinklies to get it up to +4. Now very close to where you unlock the Frida fight, there is a secret area. Jump down to the roots and pop an ember to be invaded by Dunnel. Kill him for the Floating Chaos Pyromancy. and prepare yourself for what an early pyro build with this spell does to Frida. Okay, we'll cut that out. Alright, new plan. The Onyx Blade is really good for Frida. If you're not confident with this fight, just stick to the tried and tested passive strat, doing backstabs right after the disappearing attack. But with this sword you can also really get stuck in with weapon art combos if you know what you're doing. For phase 2, buff with the weapon art at the start, then go spam R1 wildly on Ariandel. As long as you keep an eye on Frida, this phase will be over very quickly. For phase 3, the most important thing is keeping an eye on your stamina. We don't have much, and if you get greedy and end up with negative stamina while you're right next to her, you're dead. So take your time and choose your moments as carefully as you can. Into the second DLC, to the Earthen Peak Ruins. The only two items to grab here are the Silver Serpent Ring +3, which I equipped after every boss for the rest of the run. Then the Ring of Favour by the Second Angel. I didn't use this for the majority of the run, but it's good to have for the next boss. And it's time. Demons. In a very cruel move, Miyazaki made the bosses that give you the best pyromancy weapon in the game almost completely resistant to fire. They are not, however, resistant to dark, which the Onyx Blade deals. This fight was a little rougher than my typical early demon fights, but considering I didn't do Osiris or Champion beforehand, not as bad as I expected. If you're following this video and really struggle with them, there's no shame in using the summons available to get you through phase 1. As I remember, phase 2 is still going to be on you. I'd go with the Orange Demon at the start of phase 1, as we haven't really got the damage or the heals for a more aggressive strat, unless you're an absolute god, that is. Now, it's not often that I'd recommend going into a boss fight with 150,000 souls, but I think we're going to be okay here. Nip back to the start of the game for the last scale that we need. And back to Firelink to finally grab our weapon for the run, the Demon's Scar. The Scar doubles as a curved sword when you press R1 and a casting flame when you press R2. Sunlight straight sword in the offhand to cast Golden Vow before every fight. The earliest Pyromancy tome is in the Crucifixion Woods area. You can see it from the bonfire just here. For our first really good Pyromancy though, to the Stray Demon above the Old Wolf of Farron. break his legs, then take the riposte for the win. Head back to Firelink to transpose his soul into Boulder Heave. Boulder Heave is the DS3 equivalent of Rock Sling from Elden Ring. A pure physical damage spell that will be your go-to for enemies weak to dark and fire. It's also amazing for any humanoid boss, allowing you to stunlock them with enough casting speed, FP and stamina. The next Pyromancy tome is just further on in the catacombs of Karthus. Across the bridge and up the stairs on the left, then follow the path round to the right until you find a ladder. Follow your nose until you see this guy next to this very suspicious wall to grab the Karthus tome. Head down into the smouldering lake, grabbing the witch's ring just before the abandoned tomb bonfire, past the grossly incandescent worm, and into the demon ruins. Run around, terrified, lost, and screaming, until you find the Old King antechamber bonfire. From this bonfire, you can see our next tome. Run through and grab it. For the next one, head into Wolnir's arena. The tome that unlocks Dark Pyromancy is the item right in front of him. So let's talk about the Scar for a minute. The weapon art is a cool little spinning attack with an R2 follow-up, which you can then combo into a spell cast for ultimate style points. And now for Chaos Storm, the DS3 equivalent of Burn O Flame. It's not like Burn O Flame. It's actually shit. It's not bad for crowd control if you have plenty of time and health, but this Pyromancy certainly isn't the boss-killing monster of Elden Ring. It's a lot slower as well. Talking of casting speed, while we're in the area, head back to the River of Hell by the Cleansing Chapel, where you can now feel much safer due to our ranged attacks, and grab the Saint Tree Bellvine. Having the Bellvine in the offhand gives you 99 virtual decks for casting, and this does work with the Demon Scar. For even more pyromancies, we now head to the very bottom of the profaned capital. Take the ladder up from the swamp and follow the stairs up to this room, where you'll find the Jailer's keyring. Now through Irithyll Dungeon, as usual, until you get to the area with all of the Jailers circling. We're heading to the cell on the right of the room, as you look at it here. Make sure there aren't any Jailers near you as you go in. Unlock the cell and rescue Carla. She gives us access to all of the Black Flame pyromancies. At this point, I realised I needed an extra attunement slot for trying out spells, so headed back to the cliff underside bonfire in the undead settlement to speak to Irina. She sells a ring that gives you an extra slot. So Black Flame pyromancies. If you're used to Elden Ring, you're probably thinking Yhorm with Black Flame would be a walk in the park. But in DS3, Black Flame does not give you percentage-based damage. Instead, Black Flame spells do dark damage, meaning they're what you use for fire-resistant enemies. So this would be a great option for Demon Princes. Or the old Demon King, who we are fighting for once on this run. For the classic throwing orb of fire, there's 3 contenders. Great Fire Orb is good for the early game. Black Flame Orb is a general upgrade to it. Then Great Chaos Fire Orb is seriously good, as soon as you can get it and meet the requirements. But when it comes to ranged attacks, there's one that makes all the others look silly. Transpose the old Demon King's soul into Chaos Bed Vestiges. Oh yeah, brilliant. Let's punch him to death. Fucking idiot. Chaos Vestiges reminds me of playing Skyrim mods years ago. There was always one modded spell that travelled 100 yards in a dead straight line and dealt way too much damage. You'd have great fun with it for 10 minutes, then leave it in a chest somewhere so it didn't spoil the rest of the game. When you have access to the Grand Archives, head into the Dark Room past the Wax Basin to unlock the Secret Room for Flame Grant Me Strength. So we're finally there. A Golden Vow, Flame Grant Me Strength setup with the most broken spell and the coolest pyro weapon. In Dark Souls 3, Power Within saps your health as well as buffing you, so it's probably not for a first playthrough. The thing I love about this setup is you can treat Vestiges casts like a charged R2 of a bigger weapon, giving you the flexibility to attack constantly with your fast curve sword R1s, then deal some big damage in the larger openings with the spell. And if you get bored, just create some distance and start spamming. Time for another spell. For this one, we're heading back to everyone's favourite area from a video game ever. From the Demon King antechamber bonfire, head down into the big room and out into the tree roots. Head left rather than taking the stairs, run past the invader and into the lava to grab Sacred Flame. This spell is incredible for bullying humanoid enemies. You can stun lock Crystal Sage with it if you grab it early, and even use it on Frida if you're brave enough. Has a pretty slow wind up, but the damage is really strong. For Nameless King and Soul of Cinder, I went with the same melee Vestiges setup as Prince's. Both of these bosses can be kited around with Vestiges or Chaos Orb, but I find the hybrid approach way more fun. For our final spell, Back to Hell, to grab the Toxic Mist spell. To grab this, fall through the hole in the floor and spam heal. On lower level characters or high level characters with an intelligent player, you can use Flash Sweat to negate the lava damage. Poison is just about the only thing that Gale is weak to. I'm divided on whether to actually recommend this strat because I reckon the time and effort it takes to get a toxic proc is probably more hassle than it was worth. You could probably kill him quicker without it. It is super satisfying to see his health drain away while you're fighting him though. And finally, there's only one boss in the game that is super resistant to both fire and dark. When I first recorded this run, I resigned myself to this being rough and killed Midir with Demon Scar. It was an 11-minute fight. I would not recommend this. However, while editing, I remembered that Boulder Heave exists and went back for a much easier time. Although the one hit that I took on this fight was the most devastating hit I've taken in a while. Hitless Midir on the current tour of DS3 still eludes me. And that's it. How never to make a pyromancy build. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel for more From Software and Souls-like adventures. Thanks for watching.